Elizabeth Warren and Howard Schultz have been sparring over issues like taxes, mostly because Schultz is flirting with the idea of running as an independent, mostly to protect his tax cuts for the wealthy. He himself is very wealthy as the former CEO of Starbucks. Now, Elizabeth Warren has called him out, and I love the way she calls him out. This is what she's known for. This is her strongest asset. This is what she's gonna bring to the table as a candidate in 2020. She goes after the greedy, the people who want the deregulation and the tax cuts. She says, quote, "We have a billionaire who says he wants to jump into the race, and the first issue he's raised is no new taxes on billionaires." Let's see where that goes.
Well, I liked it a lot because it reminds me of me.
This guy.
So no, in all seriousness, we had heard so much about Howard Schultz for so many years of him being wildly progressive, and I was actually enthusiastic about it. And to be fair to Starbucks, the company, they actually are pretty progressive as a company, among the more progressive companies. They do a lot of good in the world, including being very decent to their farmers. So that was among the reasons that I was excited to see what Howard Schultz was gonna bring. And he comes out guns blazing for the rich. Wow, that is not at all interesting. Okay, so he says now he didn't come out attacking the Republicans.
Nope.
He didn't come out on fire against Donald Trump. He came out on fire against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Elizabeth Warren. And the first thing he comes out with is, now, hey, wait a minute, now you can't tax the rich at 70%. Now you're gonna run not as a Democrat, but as an independent, risk Donald Trump getting elected so you could save yourself money. Well, that's just gross. So of course, Elizabeth Warren should call him out on it, and she did it in spectacular fashion.
She did, and so of course he's gonna respond, and I wanna give you his response. When I see Elizabeth Warren come out with a ridiculous plan of taxing wealthy people, a surtax of 2%, he's referring to the wealth tax, because it makes a good headline, or sends out a tweet when she knows for a fact that is not something that's ever gonna be passed. This is what's wrong. Okay, let's just stop for a second. Why do you assume that it's never gonna be passed? Like, it's a brand new day in America, okay?
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, it seemed inconceivable that we would have even a discussion about increasing the top marginal tax rate. But we're having that discussion.
Yeah.
All sorts of Americans who weren't even politically inclined before are paying close attention to this debate because it affects them, it affects their pocketbooks. Yes, I know no one says pocketbooks anymore, but you get the picture. It matters to us because it's actually affecting us in our day-to-day lives.
So I want to be really clear about two different proposals and how much today is different than 5 years ago, as Anna pointed. So number one is the Ocasio-Cortez proposal of raising the marginal tax rate for every dollar above $10 million to 60 to 70%. Now that proposal is so popular that a Fox News poll said 70% of Americans are in favor of it. A Fox News poll, 70% of Americans, okay? Jamie Dimon just came out and said that maybe the taxes should be raised on the rich. The CEO of JP Chase. So that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and by the way, to be fair, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, et cetera, are all moving the Overton window on that issue. Now, separately, Elizabeth Warren came out with this proposal of a wealth tax, not on income, but on wealth. 2% above $50 million, okay, does not apply to the first 50 million, and then 3% for every dollar above $1 billion, okay? Now, Howard Schultz is right about the old days because wealthy donors, including like himself on the Democratic side, now he's not a Democrat anymore, he's an independent, but he was historically a Democrat, would go tell people like Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, you will not pass any tax increases on me. You'll be decent to gay people and black people because I'm not a monster, and Howard Schultz is not, he's not a monster, okay? He's decent on those social issues, but he doesn't act that way in terms of policy. He's just generically like, oh, I don't hate those people. Am I going to help them by building economic opportunity for them? No, not really, okay? But when it comes to economic issues, you will do as you're told. And all the donors, both the Republican and the Democratic donors, not all of them, but almost all of them, agreed, you will not tax us. And they didn't. For decade after decade, the Democratic Party went along with the Republicans in cutting taxes on the rich, never increasing them.
Exactly.
But Elizabeth Warren didn't agree. Others like Bernie Sanders didn't agree, and they were considered radicals, and they were out in the woods, right? And they were treated with a lot of times with disdain, like, oh, these wild ideas that are never gonna happen. But Howard, you couldn't be more wrong now. That proposal by Elizabeth Warren, here, I'll make a prediction ahead of time. When they do poll it, it'll poll at even higher than 70%. Because people know they don't have $50 million, and they know that it's fair that for people who, and like Howard Schultz, who earned it, let alone the people who didn't earn it, like Paris Hiltons of the world, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. That you also participate in giving that opportunity for the next generation. And so 2% on above 50 million, 3% above $1 billion, are you kidding me? It is going to be insanely popular, and it will pass.
I think he realizes that it'll be insanely popular. I think he realizes that it will pass, and I think he's afraid. I think he's moving to the right because he failed to really realize that there was this uprising, obviously a very civil uprising against the unfair system that's led to this type of wealth and income inequality. And I think that he's starting to realize now that all of these policies that he's openly saying people aren't gonna like and they're too radical and they're too crazy. No, he's getting a lot of backlash and he's actually backpedaling on some of his proposals and some of his statements. So I wanna go to Medicare for All quickly. Initially, he seemed to think that Medicare for All was a crazy idea. In fact, here are his initial statements about Medicare for All.
Well, you just played Senator Harris saying she wants to abolish the insurance industry. That's not correct. That's not American. What's next? What industry are we going to abolish next? The coffee industry?
Okay, so he thinks it's crazy, but now he's kind of backpedaling a little bit and trying to make it seem like he does really care about healthcare for everyone. Take a look.
Why do you think Medicare for All, in your words, is not American?
It's not that it's not American, it's unaffordable. So let me be very clear.
Because you called it not American.
Healthcare has been central to my entire life. We've just talked about that. The first company in America to provide comprehensive health insurance to part-time people. I know a lot about this issue. It's deeply in my heart. Now, what I believe is that every American has the right to affordable health care.
Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean? So what is your policy proposal for how to get Americans affordable health care and have that be a right? Well, that would mean that you would have some sort of single payer, but you're against single payer. So I do believe you that you did have good health care policy at Starbucks, and I've looked into it. But that doesn't mean that you've taken care of it for the rest of the country. You haven't, and even in those cases, there are deductibles and there are many other issues that are left unaddressed by your good policy at Starbucks. Mm-hmm. And so and I think that it goes to a fundamental misunderstanding, let alone the obnoxious thing of calling it not American, which is totally unacceptable.
Yes, so stupid.
But to say, hey, letting the government do health insurance, not all of healthcare, just health insurance, is somehow going to lead to nationalizing all the industries. No. That is like the fire department and the police department, something that is related to our lives, protecting our lives, which is a core governmental interest. Getting coffee from Starbucks is not a core governmental interest.
And can I jump in on that? And I want to reiterate this point, which I made on yesterday's show. Our healthcare should not be tied to our employer, period, okay? You should not be tied to a job and forced to work a job that you might actually really hate, because you're afraid of losing your health insurance benefits. Think about how many people out there want to take a risk and want to create a business, start a business, but they don't do it because they're gonna lose their health insurance benefits if they leave their current job. No, I mean, it's holding the economy back in ways that never gets discussed. And more importantly, it's torture to work a job that you might hate, but you're forced to do it because otherwise you wouldn't be covered. You wouldn't have that health insurance. It should not be tied to an employer. So while I applaud him for having, left-leaning policies at Starbucks that offer great health benefits to employees, that doesn't solve a wider problem that we have in the country. Again, healthcare should not be tied to your employer, period.
So last couple of things here. Look, when you come out guns blazing and saying the left is all wrong, and you don't barely even talk about the right, and you say you were a lifelong Democrat, well, you got a funny way of showing it. And when you fight most aggressively against things that would lead to higher taxes on you, since you're a billionaire, it makes it seem like you're running just so you can save yourself money. And that does not play well. So the good news is he's got no chance, and he's embarrassing himself, and my guess is that he will drop out soon. Because what Steve Schmidt and Bill Burton, his advisors, sold him was a bag of goods. They said, oh yeah, the American people love billionaires who argue that they should keep all their money and not give any services to the American people. And to be fair to Schmidt and Burton, that is what Washington has believed for decades.
Yeah.
And they would pretend that the American people were in favor of it. But at this point, we've done the polling, and AOC and Sanders and Warren are too strong to deny at this point. And so even the mainstream media is beginning to crack and go, well, no, it turns out just looking out for billionaires is not popular. Exactly. It turns out looking out for the American people is popular. So if you go into an election with yay billionaires as your slogan, you're gonna get destroyed. He's not gonna make it to election day. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.